Hello, and welcome to Fierce Conversations with Toby, the show where we talk about the hard things. I'm Toby Dorr. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the value of perspective through believing in the power of who you are, not letting circumstances define you, the power of perspective and optimism, never giving up, and remaining true to yourself. Our guest today is Carly Fahey-Dima, Communication and Cultural Manager at Grace Point Publishing in Colorado Springs. Carly is going to share her personal story with us. Hi, Carly. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Toby. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be your guest, and I am excited to talk about the hard things.
The hard things are important to talk about, that's for sure.
They absolutely are, and they're not the easiest to talk about too. So I don't talk about my hard things very often, so I'm gonna try my best for you.
Okay.
But I'm thrilled to be here, and absolutely optimism, perspective. You are not your situation. That is the big message that I really want to deliver in being here with you today. And I know that that's
Excellent.
a message that you also subscribe to yourself.
It's definitely a message that's near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us about a moment in your life, a crossroads, where you had to make a decision that pushed you in a different direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many moments like that happen along the course of all of our lives that push us in so many different directions. And that's just the fun part about life, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and the one that really resonates with me and perspective and everything was when I was arrested in ninth grade when I was 15 years old, accused by my own father having beat him when that was not the case.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's definitely a pivotal moment.
It really is. And what I always think about when I think about this moment is there's really no crash course to how many unbelievable, unreal, like out off the wall moments that can happen in your life that throw you challenges and all sorts of directions. And that's definitely one of the ones in mind that I'd love to touch on.
That's true. And I think that those decisions that are just thrown at us and we have to quickly adapt to them really make us stronger people. And I think that's what life's all about, is going through those difficult things and coming out on the other side.
Yeah, they're character builders. They are opportunities to just figure it out. And no matter what outcome comes of it, whether you choose, right or wrong, or you learn again and again and again, it's all just moments where life says, hey, we're going to get stronger from this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you said in ninth grade, when you were 15 years old, you were arrested because your dad accused you of beating him up, which seems pretty preposterous. But
Right.
So tell me what happened after that.
Yeah.
What was it like to be arrested by your own dad?
Yeah. So growing up, my parents went through a pretty long and just very intense divorce. I think it spanned over 10 years. My father being pretty mentally and emotionally abusive during that time to me and my siblings, between us switching with him and my mom for custody and things like that. So what had happened is I came home from a marching band event that night. I played flute in my high school marching band at the time. So I was in my gym shorts and my t-shirt, South Florida. I'm covered in sweat. And I come home to my father fighting and screaming and standing over my younger brother. And my younger brother has a disability where his left arm was paralyzed at birth, to which my father has grabbed him by this left arm on numerous occasions. And me being his older sister and not wanting all the progress he's made with his arm and everything to be ruined by some physical implication, I stepped between the two of them and pushed him out of the way. So at the time, I was maybe less than 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. And my dad had a solid 1.5 feet on me, maybe in height, and over 100 pounds of weight on me. And as soon as I got between the two of them, He threw himself up against the wall, knocked over a bunch of pictures, and essentially created a crime scene, which he had
Wow.
his, yeah, which he had his
Wow.
girlfriend corroborate his story at the time. So the police were called and questioned everyone in presence and told me and my brother that in the time that it took for them to arrive, we made up our story.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And
It's
so, how did you feel about your dad setting you up like that?
It's interesting because he always pursued me, my mom, my stepdad. He always kind of taunted us in a way and would say things like, I'm going to see you in jail one day. I'm going to see
Wow.
you on the streets.
Mhm.
So kind of, my family always talks about the laws of probability. It's kind of one of our main core
Mhm.
values in my family. And laws of probabilities, if someone's pursuing you and determined
Right.
to achieve these things,
Mhm.
it might happen. It's not
Yeah, it very
guaranteed,
well
but if
might.
it but
So it probably
if it's
wasn't
their vindication,
Mhm. So it probably wasn't a total shock to you at that time.
it
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, it was a shock in the sense that, I didn't think I was coming home from marching band this evening
Right.
and that I would soon find myself in the back of a police car, but that's where the evening went.
Wow. And so tell us about your time after you got to the juvenile hall.
Yeah, absolutely. They took me away. I didn't have any rights read to me or anything. They cuffed me at my father's apartment and then took me to the Coral Springs Police Department where I sat in a little like closet-sized room where I
Mhm.
just counted the ceiling tiles over and
Mhm.
over again. There was 18 of them
Wow.
and and I was just by myself there was no clocks. I have no idea the passage of time that happened in
Mhm.
there, but it was isolating. There were no updates. I was still handcuffed the entire time. And I just kept sitting there, just kind of talking to myself through the situation, saying, like, you're not afraid. You're not
Mm.
scared. You're not surprised, really, but this happened and
Mhm.
you're in it. Like, grab hold of your reality because you're about to go on a bumpy ride now.
So that does
And
sound like you were, excuse me, telling yourself that you had the power to overcome this, that you were going to get
absolutely.
through this. You weren't just going to give in to it.
Absolutely. That was really what kept me going through the entire time is that I'm making the choices here. Like,
Mhm.
regardless of what's happening outside of me, my reaction is really all I have in this moment. Like, I don't even have my shoelaces anymore.
Right.
um, they, like that, those are long gone, put away,
Mhm.
my earrings, like everything. I have my shirt, my shoes, no shoelaces, and a pair of gym shorts, and all
Yeah.
I'm thinking about is what is me in this situation?
Mhm.
What can I do for me to get through this? And all of that was perspective.
That's so true. I talk a lot about we can't always control our physical circumstances. Sometimes we're just in a place that we don't like and we just have to wait it out. But we can control how we think about that circumstance. And that's called a perspective. So we can either look at it as, oh, poor me. How am I going to make it through this? It's dirty in here. I'm not comfortable. Or we can do exactly what you did and say, how am I going to find myself here? And I'm going to get through this. So this isn't going to defeat me. And that totally gives you control over your circumstances because your perspective has totally turned it around, which is powerful.
Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
it's incredibly powerful. And again, they don't teach you that in school, that like your
No, they don't.
perspective is a superpower that you have in your pocket at all
Mhm,
times. And it doesn't matter what level of situation you're in, whatever you can control or what you can't control around you, whether you like it or you don't, that
mhm,
perspective is the one thing that's pretty unchanging so long as you're
mhm.
aware of it.
That's absolutely true. Now, you told me that when you got to the juvenile hall, you made a decision there that you weren't gonna be like everyone else. So, can you tell our listeners about that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I kind of was removing my physical self from the situation. I was fighting a mental battle of just remaining me to my core. So when I was actually brought into the holding cell with the other juveniles in the area that were arrested that night, I noticed one, being in South Florida, it was absolutely freezing cold. And I think you said that you related to that
Yes,
with your
it's
experience.
true. Every prison I was in 5 different ones. They were all freezing cold. I don't know why. Maybe it makes people fight less. I don't know. But they were freezing cold.
Right. And that's exactly what it was. And I clearly wasn't dressed for, probably a 60-degree air conditioning unit blowing down on me. And what I realized right away when I saw how cold it was that every other kid in the room had their arms tucked inside of their shirts, like stretching them out and just kind of preserving that body heat, creating that kind of cocoon of self and showing that they really were being affected by the environmental factors of where we were all being held. And for whatever reason or not, I kind of held on to the fact that I wasn't going to do that. I said, like, I would freeze, I would shake with, anxiety, adrenaline, whatever it is, but I refused to succumb to the culture that they were instilling in this holding cell.
By refusing to stick your arms inside your shirt like everybody else. You were just going to toughen up and take whatever they had there. Yeah.
Right. It honestly felt like a kind of like, power control where even the temperature can make you feel small and weak and helpless in that environment. And I just saw it as this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't who I am. I am a visitor. I am an observer of the situation. I'm taking everything in, but I am not, the same way if I went to a foreign country, I wouldn't suddenly adopt every single cultural practice and language and everything just because I was there. I was strictly, I felt like a tourist almost in this setting, which is a weird perspective, but it's the perspective that helped me kind of hang on to the fact that, Carly Fahey-Dima is not, some juvenile delinquent that belongs in this circumstance.
Yeah, and this isn't going to be my world. I'm going to rise above this. I think that's
Absolutely.
Pretty powerful. So how long were you there?
I was there just for the night, essentially. I was offered, a few meals of my time there, which were peanut butter sandwiches, to which then got me, being in my head the whole time. You're not talking to anyone and no one's talking to you. I'm like, what if I had a peanut allergy? It's pretty common. But I kept prompting myself with questions because I personally just love sociology. I love the study of people and everything and groups and cultures. So I really approached the situation, even at that age, of just looking at the culture of it and what was happening around me, processing it all, dividing myself from it, and just still reminding myself of who I am and where I'm supposed to be.
I find that amazing because you were just 15 years old and you had the strength of character to come up with those hypotheses, which really are true. And I spent 27 months in prison, and people in prison do get institutionalized. And that's exactly what you refused to do, was to let that prison, that juvenile hall, change who you were and control the way you were going to act. And that took a tremendous amount of belief in yourself and courage to, it's difficult to be cold, and most people want to put their arms in and get warm. But to you, it wasn't just putting your arms in there to get warm. Right. It was becoming an automaton just like everyone else. And you just weren't going to do it. Perhaps the officers watching juvenile hall loved to see the kids get cold, and you just weren't even going to give them that either. You were going to, get through this and not let it define who you were. That's pretty powerful.
Right.
So what happened after you went home with your dad? Did he ever apologize?
Oh, absolutely not. He picked me up the following day because at the time I wasn't allowed to see my mom. So he was my only kind of ticket out of there. And he, it's weird having the person who puts you in such a bad situation also be the person who takes you out of it.
Yes. That was difficult because he could say you did something else in the car and turn right around and get you back in there for a longer period of time. It would be
Right.
difficult to trust him.
Exactly. And already my trust for him, just with my experience, was, and little to none. I'd say emphasis probably on none. But he picked me up, and I refused to like sit in the front seat of his car. I sat as far away from him as possible,
Mhm.
just for my own safety.
Mhm.
Um, Made sure everyone saw I wasn't anywhere near this person, because I also had that same thought of like, he could say, I'm in the car doing the exact same thing and send me right
Mhm.
back. And the
Mhm.
only thing that was on my mind, which again, holding on to my reality, was that I have marching band practice at 9 a.m. today. it was a it was a Saturday morning, and
Mhm.
all I can remember was that I'm gonna be late to marching band.
Did you make it to
so
marching band?
so he offered me like breakfast on my way home, and I said no. Like I didn't want anything more from him than to
Mhm.
just get out of his presence. So he brought me to his house. I went in, reassured my brother I was okay, because he spent the entire night wondering where his sister
Yes.
went.
Mhm.
um and the last time he saw me, I was taken out in handcuffs.
Handcuffs, that's traumatizing, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I came back, my phone was gone. I couldn't contact anyone. He had like raided all of my stuff and made sure I had no means of really like documenting anything. But I
Wow.
just grabbed my water that I bring to band. I grabbed my sheet music, and I walked 4.5 miles to my high school.
Wow. Wow, that's
Because I mean,
perseverance.
and I was late, and I showed up and just ran right onto the field where my spot was in formation. And everybody, asked like, "Are you okay? Like, what happened? Why are you
Mhm.
late?" And I just said, I got stuck in other things. And it wasn't a matter of embarrassment, but again, it was another kind of source of me saying like, what happened to me was, it was a night. I'm moving past it. I am
Mhm.
here. I'm doing what I enjoy. I'm reclaiming whatever aspects of my life that happened prior. And I'm not going to let this, because I'm in high school, like these kids are going to start defining me for what I went through. Um, but I said I'm going to choose how they define me, and I'm not ashamed of what I did, but
Mhm.
and what I went through, but I have my priorities in order, and I just need to hold on to whatever reality I have.
I think that's really powerful and wise. It was pretty wise to come to that. When looking back, do you look at that, uh, incident in your life, that moment in your life, as something that was so negative that you couldn't find any good in it? Or do you see it as something that you could use later in life?
I absolutely see it as something I could use later in life. I know you're really big on saying you're not your worst mistake, and I
Mhm.
don't even look at that night as a mistake. I look on it as like seeing from myself what I was capable of.
Mhm.
Because until you're faced with a situation, like I can say, you are not your situation, be optimistic, persevere. But until I can apply that to myself, I don't know if I've got what it takes to even practice
Mhm.
what I'm preaching.
Right.
So
Right. And so probably
yeah,
there's been times later in your life where maybe you weren't sure you could deal with something, but you can look back on that and say, "Oh, I went through that. This will be a breeze."
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And multiple occasions, even with this instance, I mean, after the fact, clearly I had a criminal record to my name. And in the options I was given from the juvenile facility to kind of clear my name was to write an apology note to my father and do
Mm.
community service, or I could take it to court. I chose to take it to court. I
Wow. Uh-huh.
Obviously the
And how
easy
did
way
that
out
go?
was to it was intense. I mean, I'd never been to court for myself before. I'd seen my parents go through, child support hearings and divorce
Mhm.
hearings, but never with myself as, the person who's being charged as guilty or not guilty. And again, I'm still in my freshman year of high school. Like I'm still just
Wow.
trying to go to marching band, finish my
Mm.
classes, do all those normal things. And I've got, a court date coming up where I need to defend myself. So it
Wow.
was I mean, I could have taken the easy way out of just writing an apology and moving on. But again, regardless of mistake or not, I wanted control over the situation. I didn't want to just hit the delete button. I wanted a chance to speak for myself, to um, tell my story, and to see whether or not, in the eyes of a court, if I would be proven guilty or not guilty.
And so what was the verdict?
Yeah, I got a pretty great lawyer whose name I can't recall at this moment, but he basically, in our preparation for the court, he's like, we know that there's no way you're capable of doing the things that this man is accusing you of. Like, he's got, unless you have a black belt in jujitsu or some sort of special training,
Right.
I can't foresee, someone of your stature and size and upbringing, everything, to be this violent and person who would just beat the living heck out of their father. So in court, I was found not guilty. But what was interesting was, because of, I guess, who I was outside of the circumstance, which was just some band kids. Like, I was at the time, like, in line to be valedictorian for my class. Like, I was doing really well in school. I was in the honor societies and everything. And the judge said, I'm going to find you not guilty so that you can have a chance, for college and your future and everything. Which, again, didn't really feel too much like justice to me, because
right. Yeah. It's like he was doing you a favor instead of like validating the
instead
truth.
instead of listening to me. So it was kind of a bitter. I mean, I was found not guilty, and I was able to go to court and say all these things in front of the judge, have my lawyer ask me if I'm a black belt in karate in front of everyone. So it was an experience that I also don't regret, and that I'm glad I pursued. But at the same time, the result was conflicting internally, because it was the result I wanted, but not from the means I wanted.
And perhaps there's a lesson in that. And maybe that's why it turned out the way it did. Because if it had they found you not guilty and the judge didn't qualify the reason, maybe it wouldn't have stuck in your head as strongly. Who knows? I think that a lot of things happen for a reason, and there's blessings in all of them. And wow, I can't believe, when you told me that you had these two options, I was thinking, don't say you're sorry. Don't sign the paper. And you didn't.
Right.
And that's amazing, because that would be the easy way out, the sure way
Oh,
out.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
going to court was not a sure thing. If you'd been found guilty, you'd toss the dice on something that could affect the rest of your life. But principle made you go ahead and toss the dice. So that's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And the entire time, I mean, I'm still viewing it from an outside perspective. I mean, having that event occur, I was in a state of shock for I don't even know how long. Like, I spent time in class just processing it and rethinking it, recounting the ceiling tiles, remembering how cold I was, remembering, being fingerprinted and pictures taken. And I just kept saying, I'm like, I don't know how I got out of this the way I did. Like, I surprised myself in my ability to really stress to myself that it's all perspective. It's all mentality. Like, it was a mental marathon. Honestly, just going
and you
through it.
owned it. You didn't let yourself be a victim. You didn't fall into the victim trap, like, oh, this terrible thing happened to me. You stood up and found your power and found a way out. And that's
Absolutely
awesome. I mean, that's what changes the world, really, that kind of an attitude. So did you remain living with your dad? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, part of my perspective and my mentality is that I did have to remain living with my dad, which was, just years of mental torment. And I got to the point where I used to have on my hand every day, I'd write how many days it was until I turned 18.
Wow.
Every single day. And I'd look at it, like, on my left hand, and I'd erase it and, change the color for whenever holidays happening. And I'd just watch it tick down throughout my life and know that I'd be released from that prison.
That's
That
amazing. Mhm.
and just keeping that mentality that, this situation that I'm in again is not permanent. It's not something I can control. I can't just go live on my own. I can't go live at a friend's house. Like, I am
Mhm.
legally required to visit or stay 100% of my time with this man who had me arrested and
Yeah.
continually and
Wow.
continually tormented me. And
Mhm.
again, it was just, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to find myself in this. I'm going to find strength in this, and I'm going to get through it.
I think that's an amazing story, and I loved you said you were gonna reclaim yourself through this process, and the other thing that really stood out to me is you said perspective is a superpower, and it truly is, and I think people don't realize how much power owning your own perspective can give you in any situation. You can really it's a game changer, really.
It is. It's
Mhm.
a whole. You said it perfectly. It is a game changer. You could be dealt the worst hand possible, and you can flip your perspective to figure out how this is a learning opportunity, how there's strength in this, how your character is going to be tested. Like, even if you haven't figured it out on the spot, even if you're not thrown into a situation, you know exactly what you're going to get from it.
Mhm.
Just holding on to perspective, just repeating, like, look at this from perspectives is what's gonna make all the difference, because you can't always change what's happening around you.
You can't. And perspective gives the weakest person in their darkest moment all of the power. And I think that's, great that you called it a superpower. I love that. I love that. Well,
Absolutely.
well, Carly, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I haven't asked you about?
No, I think we covered a lot of, pretty much all of it. I'd say that this was a fantastic interview experience. You made it very easy to talk about the hard things.
Thank you.
And even in this situation, I feel like I've grown more from the
Oh,
experience, just
good.
retelling
Good.
it and recalling it,
I
because it's
do
not
think that telling our stories gives us power and helps us grow because the more we tell it, the more we let it take root in ourselves and find the good in it. So I think that's
right.
great. Yeah.
And
Well,
this
I
is my
appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to tell us about your hard things.
absolutely, this is my first time really, like, publicly speaking to someone about them. I've written it a few times and,
Hmm.
taken different courses of perspective and how I write my situation, but having it out there in a conversation is a different type of kind of therapy and
Hmm.
healing, and, like you said, rooting it.
Well, I look forward to the book you're going to write one day. I'd like to sign up to be one of your beta readers when you're ready because I think you have
I,
a powerful story to tell.
I appreciate it, Toby. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. I want to remind you, that none of us are our worst mistake. We all have so much more to offer the world, and those so-called mistakes really are just blessed opportunities to learn and grow, and Carly has showed us that so well today. Next week, we'll continue to bring you inspiring stories by people who've identified a need for change and are working to make a difference in this world. Subscribe to our Patreon channel, Fierce Conversations, for special inside access. Go to patreon.com/fierce conversations or look for the link in the show notes. This is Fierce Conversations with Toby. In my memoir, Living with Conviction, I recount a conversation I had in prison where my friend Lisa told me, "In here, we can talk about all the hard things. In fact, I think we must, and so we shall." Until next time, this is Toby. You can also find a link in the show notes to get a copy of my memoir, Living with Conviction. Thanks so much for joining us. And don't forget, perspective is your superpower too.